also wanted to talk about diet, right? And I know that's a big one for me too. The more that we're sitting, the more conscious that we have to be is number one, from my opinion. And number two, our diet now, and the importance of our immune system and boosting our immune system at this time is just more essential than ever when there's so much danger out there with the virus. So what's your take on it?
So from a Chinese medical point of view, every food has a different flavor, and different organs are get protection from different foods, and different foods sort of attack different organs. So if we're talking about the lungs, we're talking about, dryness. We need to have food that has a lot of liquid in it. And great foods for the lungs are apples and pears. Even adding a little bit of spicy is good, because even though the spiciness makes it like some dryness, we want a little bit there to move the fluids. Like from what I've been reading, the case studies coming out of China, and all my colleagues we've got our eyes there, because in China they are using traditional Chinese medicine to treat the corona patients in the hospitals. We're looking at tongues, and we're doing these case studies, and what we see is phlegm, like tons and tons of phlegm attacking the lungs. And the CTs of the lungs show like pieces of glass, like fibrous tissue in the lungs. So I think it's really important for us to do what we can to eliminate phlegm forming foods at this time. Even if somebody's constitution doesn't tend to create phlegm, it isn't, deficient in those areas, it's good to know. And foods, according to Chinese medicine, that create phlegm are dairy foods, fried foods, foods like bananas and avocados make phlegm in the body, and as well as like a lot of sweet foods. Basically, these are foods that the body has a hard time processing.
Right.
If you imagine your body like an oven, certain people's ovens are set to high, in which case they can eat anything and metabolize it quickly. And certain people's ovens are set to low. And in an oven set to low, anything that requires extra energy to digest carries a risk of a byproduct being made hanging around the body. We can think of that as phlegm. So if somebody were to have an iced cappuccino, that would be harder for the body to digest than, let's say, a hot coffee, or like a frozen smoothie wouldn't be as good as, let's say, compote or applesauce. Some people take it as far as reducing the amount of raw foods that are intaked, meaning some promote having stews, cooked foods, roasted vegetables, baked goods, instead of raw, cold, frozen things, just so that it's ready-made energy for the body, and the body doesn't have to exert extra energy.
Doesn't have such a hard time breaking it down and processing and everything like that.
And especially if somebody has a pre-existing lung or digestive issue, they should be especially careful at this time to take in food that is really fuel and doesn't slow down the body even further. So that it doesn't create phlegm, and just so that it's just more equipped to handle whatever comes to it. So I guess if we want to package it down, be like more baked, more spicy, more cooked, less dairy, less fried, less raw.
Right. So I'm going to add to that. I think in terms of diet also, for me, I'd say because we're more sedentary, you have to kind of really think about, I'm sure, I don't know if anyone really is thinking about weight loss at this time. Probably people are thinking more about maintenance and not putting on extra weight. Whatever you're holding, whatever your goal is, weight-wise or health-wise, we're in the house a lot. And I know in Israel, most of us have open plan living areas, so we can see the kitchen all the time and the food just calls. So trying to be mindful of to portion control is probably also important. I'd probably imagine that from a Chinese perspective also, if the body needs to be able to process down the food. So if we're taking in too much, you know, if we're eating
Right.
too much, it's not going to be able to do that. And if we're not exercising and there's no calorie exertion, there's no calories we're not exerting any energy, then, you know, it's just sitting there. We're not processing the food. One thing that I found very helpful, because it has been a long time since we've been in the house, is to try to stop eating earlier after your dinner. You know, so try to eat early, eat at 7, you know, finish eating at 7, 8 o'clock. People used to say to me, well, I can't stop eating early because my husband doesn't come home from work. Now your husbands are probably home from work.
Right.
So no excuses. So stop eating early and keep a 12-hour window until you eat again, so your body can break down the food. And if you can, exercise in a fasted state, so that you're burning off more calories, and your body's not as sluggish. And
Right.
so I'd probably add that to the mix. And yeah, I agree with you. I think eating as clean as possible is probably very important at this time. Take away all, now more than ever, it's really important to take away all the processed junk food, even though now more than ever it's probably the hardest time when you want to eat more. So it's hard. I suppose that probably leads to the next part very nicely, which is about emotions and how to cope with our emotions, so we don't fall apart, so we don't binge eat and binge on all the cakes and everything. Before I go on to that, is there anything else you want to add about food or diet or
Yeah, another thing that's helpful for the spleen, which is a main digestive organ in Chinese medicine, to feel good, is eating at regular times. That,
right?
the body knows when it will be expecting food and it receives food at those times. It's really good for it, as opposed to having, very little food and then eating like a huge dinner or a huge lunch. It could, you can have big meals or small meals or whatever, but if it is at set times, it is better for digestion, and your body knows what to
Interesting.
expect, when to expect it.
So you're not adverse to snacking. It's just snack at set times.
Right, right.
Okay. Okay. So you're
Yeah.
planning your snacks. Okay.
Right. You
Yeah.
can plan the snacks, and if you get up and you exercise at 8 and then you have your breakfast at 9,
Right.
and you don't have your lunch till, let's say, 1. I mean, it also emotionally, it is really good to have set meal times.
Definitely. Yeah.
Then it's a routine, and at this time of the day I'm going to be busy preparing the meal, and that's okay, and that routine is actually really good, and I think that's something that a lot of people haven't had
Right.
until recently, including myself, and is great. So it's nice to, in this Hefker sort of schedule
Sure.
thing, if you could at least say, well, I'm eating around this time, I'm eating around this time, I'm eating around
Right.
this time, that is also really healthy. And so that if somebody's oven is set to low, at least there's no risk of it being overwhelmed by too much, or
Right.
not having enough. So it's sort of like an evenness until that fasting period, which is good because then the glycogen will come in and help. So
Yeah. Sure.
between the intermittent fasting and the scheduled meals, it's a really great plan
Yeah.
for immune health.
So in a strange way, the isolation period that we're stuck in right now is a really good way for us, if we can, if we can, to look after ourselves. And when it can be very easy to live without structure right now, and but it's very healthy. It'll be very healthy for us to provide structure if we do that through, like you say, when we're eating, have a time that you set aside to exercise, have the times that you set aside to eat, for eating, have times that you set aside to sit and read, or to be with your kids, and structure your day. I found that to be very helpful. I know that it's harder if the bigger the family that you have, and the more kids that you have, and the more chaos that's going on around. But maybe just choose one or two things. Like, if your kids aren't getting up till 10, 11 o'clock, then you can exercise at 8. And
Right.
then you can still structure the meal times, so that they're also, it's good for them also. You don't want them to be eating throughout the whole day. It's not healthy for them either. So I would probably suggest that.